what we're dealing with today. But anyway, Mr. Huffman.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, putting aside the fact that the Presidio is part of one of the most visited U.S. Park Service units in the nation, that it is a national asset. If the gentleman is looking for something to be outraged about, where a Republican member of Congress gets what clearly is inappropriate preferential treatment, I would direct him to the so-called bipartisan Senate infrastructure package, where Lisa Murkowski gets a heck of a lot more than this, $25 billion in subsidies for a new LNG project in Alaska. The public won't be visiting this new LNG project. It won't be an amenity that is part of our
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna reclaim my time here. I'm gonna reclaim my time.
Will be very outraged about that, even though it happens to
Mr.
be
Chairman?
a fossil fuel giveaway.
Gentlemen,
And with that, I'll yield back.
Yeah,
you.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure if my internet connection's not working well again, because our state's been trashed. But the question was, I'm sorry, maybe it didn't come across. In this legislation, could the chairman identify for me a Republican that's being treated similarly? I understand the gentleman from California is trying to answer another question, but I guess the answer to this question, the chairman was unable to answer it. The subcommittee chairman was unable to answer it. So I think that the answer is no one. No one is being treated like this, where they get a $200 million slush fund. Now, look, I also do want to respond briefly, Mr. Chairman, to the comments earlier from my friend Mr. Huffman about wildfires. I've read in the paper where arsonists, where power companies and others have started fires, and I am really, really sorry about that. I would never wish that upon anyone, but I also know that Mr. Westerman has legislation, and I've offered legislation amendments trying to help provide funds to improve the management of the forest, to prevent these forest fires or the impacts. And I know that my friends have repeatedly objected to those. And so we are trying to help you, Mr. Huffman. And certainly, let me say it again, I would never wish a disaster upon anyone. Urge adoption of this amendment, yield back.
Just a small correction for the record, Mr. Graves, myself or Mr. Huffman or myself did not refuse to answer the question. We we were not unable to answer the question. That I consider non-germane, and Mr. Huffman attempted to answer it. So there we are.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize.
And with that, let me
that y'all didn't have an answer to the question.
Hearing no further debate, the question is on the Obernaut Amendment number 6 to the ANS. Those members in favor, please unmute and indicate by saying aye.
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 All members opposed can unmute, and all those opposed, please indicate by saying no. No.
No.
In the opinion of the chairs, the noes have it. The noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, I request a recorded vote.
Gentlemen request a recorded vote and postpone pursuant to prior agreement. We now go to Abernathy number 1. Mr. Westerman, you're recognized for 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm honored to offer this really good amendment on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Abernathy. Mr. Chairman, we're facing some problems in this country. Just look at the backgrounds of our colleagues. Look at the background of Mr. Garrett's WebEx. Look at the forest fires in Mr. Huffman's background. Look at the issues that are really out there. Coastal degradation, increasing sea levels, wildfire, drought, hurricanes. We could all be working to fix these problems, yet we're debating a partisan bill that will do little, if anything, to address these problems. And that's why I like Mr. Abernathy's amendment, because it's actually a bipartisan amendment, because it's looking to alleviate some issues with the drought based on recommendations from the Biden administration. I was recently able to go out to the San Joaquin Valley and meet with a number of water users who are experiencing the impacts of the drought. The infrastructure that this amendment funds is critical to those water users. It's a simple amendment, like I said, that it funds 19 Bureau of Reclamation projects that were recommended by the Biden administration under the WIN Act. And it does it by eliminating the resurrected 1930s federal work program, which I don't see how anybody with a straight face can think this is going to do anything to improve forest health or climate or anything else. It's just a big government work program that's going to compete with the private sector at a time when U.S. businesses can't find labor. I think it's especially atrocious to resurrect this program, not only when private sector employers can't find people, but when there are nonprofit organizations that are doing this kind of work. We should focus more on important issues, issues that are important to our Western communities and important to the whole country. Where this drought's occurring is in the breadbasket of our country. It's a place where all of us depend on food that's coming out of there, and that food simply can't be grown, we all know, without water. A lot of times we want to blame climate on problems that we've created ourselves. And take the wildfire issue. I've found it especially intriguing that for the past few months, every day I try to read an AP story about wildfires in the West. And I've picked up on a pattern that somewhere in that article it's going to say something about climate change over the past 30 years has caused more wildfires in the West. And it's ironic that those stories never mention anything about forest management, which was stopped about 30 years ago in the West. So sure, the climate's warming and it's drier and it increases wildfires, but we've created the problem by refusing to manage the forest. And that problem is going to continue to persist. And Republicans have offered bipartisan solutions to do forest management in a scientific way. Those ideas are rejected. The Climate Corps is not going to be able to go in and fix these problems. Look at the drought issue in the West. There's plenty of water. The state of California produces enough water to grow the crops, to provide species habitat, to meet people's needs. But it's the mismanagement of that water and the refusal to do more projects to provide abundant water is where the problem is. So let's quit blaming everything on the climate. Let's put some of the blame where it's due on our ability or inability to manage, our inability to take action, which is always a decision to take actions, which are the wrong actions, which leads to the mismanagement that gets us in a lot of these predicaments. So I think this is a common sense measure that Mr. Obernolte put out there to take money out of an antiquated works program and put it into water infrastructure in the San Joaquin Valley so that the whole country can benefit. I urge adoption of the amendment and I yield back.
Anyone else wish to be recognized?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Ben's here.
Mr. Betts, recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in support of the amendment, I want to further call out, if you will, the challenge that the CCC presents to private business. We heard just day before yesterday, President Biden comment that the jobs under his bill, with direct reference, under the Green New Deal portions of this bill, would pay somewhere between $45 and $50 an hour. $45 and $50 an hour plus healthcare, to quote what he said 2 days ago. And so to support the ranking member's remarks regarding the CCC and what it's going to do to private business, when they can't find people right now to work at $15, $17, $18 an hour, which is the case at least up here in Oregon, and then to suddenly have a competitor that's going to be funded by something close to $3 billion in the form of the CCC, bringing that kind of a pay scale into play, it's crazy. And so the folks right now are worried. The private business are worried about trying to find people just with the subsidy that's been provided by virtue of increased unemployment. With this at $45 to $50 an hour, what is a small business going to do? So of course I would support moving the modest sum of $244 million out of the NOAA and FWS CCC there's far more money in that portion of the bill. There's 1.7 billion alone going to national parks for the CCC, 900 million going to the Bureau of Land Management for CCC, 400 million going to U.S. Fish and Wildlife for CCC, 500 million to the Tribal Climate Corps, again for CCC. This kind of funding for competition against private business is simply wrong. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Thank you. Anyone else wish to be recognized? If not, hearing no further debate, the question is on the Obernaut Amendment number 1 to the ANS. And all members in favor can unmute and indicate by saying aye.
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 Members opposed can unmute and indicate by saying no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.